As you can tell, I'm not in my clericals. Why? Well, we're going to do the Grinch. Molly, if you're there. Owen, Easton, Ellie, Natalie, Harper, Trevor, Jolie, Ava, and Jack. It's Grinch time for you and for anyone else. Before I get into the Grinch, you're probably wondering, what's this got to do with Christianity? About as much as Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. Notice neither of them mention Christ, but there is in it this wondrous thing from Scrooge that echoes through the centuries. Spirit, is it too late? Can a man change? Is there any hope for me? And a young boy who later became a man who was baptized and confirmed a Lutheran in Springfield, Massachusetts, as an seemingly irredeemable character who becomes the good news. The message of this Advent tide is that yes, there is hope. Yes, things can change. And yes, yes, and yes. The narrator associated with this is Boris Karloff, and I want to give you a little bit of stuff on good old Boris. Boris Karloff was a man who was abused by director after director. There were many times he could hardly walk because of all the injuries from costumes, all the toxic stuff in his makeup. But he was someone who dearly loved children. And he lived in the Dakota Apartments, which is Central Park West. But because he was Boris Karloff, no kid would ever trick or treat or come near his apartment. He scoured and called every candy store in the 5 boroughs to figure out what was the candy that kids loved. He'd put it out and no one would take it. So on Halloween, he and Basil Rathbone, famously the Sherlock Holmes, but at that time they were doing Roger Corman horror flicks. They would go through Central Park and Boris would go, boo. Boris fought for actors. Indeed, the whole actors union was started by people like Boris Karloff. So he brings to this specialness about it all. So today, I'm going to do How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Those of you at Messiah Lutheran know that every once in a while we'll have a Dr. Seuss Sunday. We haven't had one for a while, but COVID is not as strong as Dr. Seuss. COVID is not as strong as Harper or Natalie or Trevor or Ellie or Jolie or Owen or Easton or Jack or Ava. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas. The whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knew the reason why. Could it be his head was not put on straight or screwed on right? Or perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. For whatever reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Who, staring down from his cave with such a sour puss. Grinchy, Grinchy, the warm lighted houses below in the town, for he knew that every Who in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath. "They'll be hanging their stockings," he smiled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here." And then he'd growl with his grinchy fingers, nervously drumming, "I must find a way, some way of stopping Christmas from coming." Tomorrow he knew that all the Who boys and all the Who girls would be playing with wonderful things. Oh, the noise! The noise, the noise, the noise. He hated the noise. Then the Who's, young and old, would sit down for a feast. They'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. Why, they'd feast on Who pudding. They'd feast on rare Who beast. Why, was something that the Grinch couldn't understand, they'd go outside, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. Oh, the singing! They'd sing! They'd sing and sing and sing and sing. The more the Grinch thought about it, this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, "I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how?" Then the Grinch had an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. "I know just what I'll do." The Grinch laughed in his throat and made a quick Santa Claus suit, hat, and coat. He chuckled and chuckled. What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. I need a reindeer. The Grinch backed around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No. His poor dog Max was roped into things, and a big horn covered his head. Then he loaded up some bags and an empty sack on a ramshackle sleigh he hitched up to old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" The sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay a-sleeping and sound. All the windows were dark, for the snow filled the air, and all were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. "This stop is number 1, the old Grinchy claws," hissed. He climbed up the roof with that nasty bag of his. Oh, that Grinch! He slithered down the chimney and he went to all where the stockings were all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "they'll be the first to go." And he slithered, and he slunk, with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present. Pop guns, bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. He stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly snuck all the bags up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who beast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beef. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, the Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all that food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I'll stuff up the tree." The Grinch grabbed the tree, and he stared up and started to shove it. And he heard a sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw Who, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than true. The Grinch was caught. "Who, daughter, who's got out of bed for a cup of cold water?" She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, he thought of it quick. Why, my dear, sweet little one," the fake Santa Claus said, "there's a light on the tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, gave her a drink, and she went back to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went up the chimney and stuffed the tree up. But wait, there's more. Then the last thing he took was the log from the fire. And then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. On their wall he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and one speck of food. He left in the house a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. And then the old Grinch went up and up. All the Who's were in bed and still a snooze. Then he packed up his sled, and he packed it with presents and ribbons and rackings and rags and tags and all the tinsel and all the trimmings and all those things 3,000 feet. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet. He rode his load to the tippy top to dump it. Boo-poo to the Who! He grinchily started humming. They'll be finding out there's no Christmas that's coming. They'll be waking up, and I know. They'll be opening their mouths and seeing nothing and going, "Boo, boo, boo," in Whoville. And then a noise. I simply must hear. The Grinch put his head to his ear. He did hear a sound. It started out low and began to grow. A sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound was merry. It couldn't be so. But it was merry, very. Oh, yes, he stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes, and then he shook. And he had a surprise for all the Whos in Whoville were singing. He hadn't stopped Christmas for coming. It came, somehow or other. It came all the same. I am the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold, in the snow stood puzzling and puzzling. How could this be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages and boxes and bags. He puzzled 3 hours, till his puzzler got sore. And the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas doesn't come from a store. Perhaps it's a little bit more. And what happened next? Well, in Whoville, they say the Grinch's tiny heart grew 3 sizes that day, and the minute his heart didn't feel so tight, he whizzed down his load through the heights and the morning lights. Why, he brought back the toys, the food, and the feast, and all the Whos in Whoville celebrated. And the Grinch, why the Grinch even got the roast beef. He hadn't stopped Christmas. Nothing can. Nothing can stop God's love for you, my friends. I hope to see you Christmas Eve in the church parking lot. And to all of you, I wish you blessings and love. Orson didn't get his horn today, but if you want a picture of Orson and his horn, you can email me, Mullers1973 at yahoo.com. And on behalf of Orson and I and Jennifer, Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good night.